there was an image I was after, which I haven't got yet, but I got this other crazy view where the bird was preening, and instead of like turning its head back up and facing, it completely flipped under and looked at me in kind of reverse, which was, you're just waiting for that, and your fingers on the shutter, just waiting for that peak moment. And if you don't wait for that peak moment, and if your mind strays, you quite often miss that stuff. So a lot of the stuff is a happy accident, but the happy accidents come with all that time spent in the field, understanding your bird, understanding how to get close to birds without stressing them out, which is easier said than done, and finding what you think is a good angle on a bird and what looks good.
What's up, beautiful people? Welcome to episode 51 of Photo Country, the podcast where we talk to inspiring image makers around the world. Consistently creating new content isn't easy, and it requires a lot of focus and energy. It can be hard to balance them. Too much energy and you feel amped up and ready to bounce off the walls, instead of feeling dialed in. But I found this little shot which is called Magic Mind. I take it because it's so easy to use, it tastes great, and it helps me a lot. I'm able to be more creative thanks to the nootropics inside that and allow you to stay focused and relaxed at the same time, so you can enter flow state more easily. I totally recommend you go check them out at magicmind.co/photocountry and join a community of go-getters. You can also use my discount code Rajeev20. A big thank you to Magic Mind for sponsoring this podcast. For this episode, I finally managed to talk to Paul Kettel, an amazingly talented wildlife and landscape photographer from Auckland, New Zealand. I first came across his work when Neeloid shared his image of Toby, and ever since I have wanted to get him on the podcast. So finally, he accepted, and without further ado, let's get into the conversation. Hey, Paul, thanks for accepting the invite and come on this podcast. I know it's been a long pending desire for me to talk to you on this podcast. It's been, I don't know, maybe a year or so before I contacted you, and and at that time I don't know if you're busy or whatever. And then after I saw that photograph of yours of Torbe.
Yep.
So it's sort of a really iconic image, and I in fact went to Torbe after seeing your photograph, but I could, because it was high tide, I couldn't get to the other side. When I told one of my friends about going for an image like this, and he said, "Hey, you should check out Paul Kettle's image." So I immediately went to Instagram and checked out, and yeah, I mean it's an iconic image, and I told my friend Neeloid, he also follows you on Instagram. I said, "Hey, I'm going to talk to Paul." It's like, yeah, I love his work. I'm looking forward to the chat. So you already have a Instagram fan looking forward to this episode.
Awesome. Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks very much for having me on. And yeah, I guess I'm a bit of a shy guy, so hence my reticence to connect. But hey, you got me. You worked on me. So that's all good.
So I like being persistent and keep asking till you say yes. Yeah, I know it's not the same for everyone. So lots of people say no. so it's part and parcel of the games, right? So, but how did you get into photography?
Gosh, way back, probably early 80s. I had my father had a SLR camera that I used to play around with, which is film, somewhat hit and miss. And I was at the time was like very much into my surfing and windsurfing. So through the 80s, 90s, the camera always accompanied me on little adventures, and it really was a way of documenting. Then I definitely started to get a little bit more passionate about it, and I can remember my first job as a trainee engineer. I saved up my pennies and bought a Nikon F801S at the time, which was kind of like nearly the top camera. And from there, really, that camera and very limited set of lenses sort of accompanied around New Zealand while we surfed and windsurfed. And I documented friends and the travels. And from there, it just snowballed, really. It's been something that's been through my life since then. And it's ebbed and flowed in terms of when I've really focused on it, and times that I've kind of left it aside a little bit. The last 10 years, though, it's really become quite an obsession, and it's a really good excuse to get out. That accompanies me when I travel. So my wife and I, and my daughter, have done a lot of travel. I'm one of those lucky guys that has a very understanding wife and daughter that doesn't mind me stopping on the side of the road and waiting for 20 minutes while I get a shot. But I guess very, very obsessive about it. And probably the last 10 years, I've kind of mellowed over the last few. And now I'm very picky with what I do in terms of when I go out, what I shoot. And quite often I don't take a camera with me, which is very strange from anybody that would have known me earlier on. So it's been a long journey, and it's always been there. I've had other interests, I've had other jobs and pursuits that have come and gone, but photography has always been there in the background, and now it really is a really good reason to get out and explore and be out in nature and just being mindful. I find it's a very good place to just sit with your camera on a beach and not worry about anything other than what a bird's doing in front of you or how you can get into a better angle, etc. So yeah.
Mhm. And did it ever cross your mind that, I need to make this a profession, or it just remained an artistic pursuit for you as a serious hobby?
I had a go at trying to monetize it, and it's one of I got a show in a gallery very, very easily, probably about 20 odd years ago, and it came very, very quick and very, very easy. I don't think I was evolved enough with my photography to actually have that show at the time, but I had a show in a pretty reputable gallery, sold a few pieces, and then started thinking that, oh, maybe I could make some money out of this. This was at the time of the global financial crisis, so this was just before that. And I had quite a few pieces in galleries. And then the GFC happened, and those galleries vaporized, unfortunately, and spending was not a thing. So a lot of the images were damaged, or they just didn't sell, or I'd moved on in my photography, and I just didn't really want to sell them. And I think trying to make money out of it at that point, I realized that the passion and the outlet balance really, really went away. It went more to stressing about them making money. What would I shoot? What would I shoot that would sell? As opposed to what I do now is I shoot for myself, and I decided at that point that I can make way more money in my profession, and fund this crazy expensive thing that is wildlife photography. It's probably the worst genre of photography to choose if you're a bit of a penny pincher, because yeah, long glass, fast cameras aren't cheap. So I did think about it, but I'm an engineer by training. I've morphed over the years into IT. I actually work as an enterprise architect now, so I work on big large scale systems, and that's really what I love doing with my mind, and luckily that pays quite well. And I definitely need an outlet from that very, very technical focused ways of working, and I find the photography is just the perfect outlet, and it's even better an outlet without money involved in it. Would I like to sell a few more prints? Yeah, I should try and get my work out there. I only have an Instagram account. I did have a website which I did sell a few images through over the years, but the upkeep on that and the interest has dropped, and I recently got rid of that.
Right, right. And I was actually going through your feed, and there's this what I have on the screen right in front of me, where you're deep in thought, sprawled on the sand, and the caption reads, "My happy place, wet sand blown, camera in hand."
Yeah, absolutely. That was taken by a good friend of mine. We called Michael Helen. He's actually a very good photographer, as a wildlife photographer. He's probably worth having a little look at as well. He's on Instagram. but we quite often go out shooting and we go and do our own thing. And every now and then, well, there's nothing happening. We'll point a camera on each other and try and get some decent shots. But yeah, that one was, I think that was why we were right on the water's edge, very wet, lying virtually in the surf line, trying to get a shot of a couple of oyster catchers that were walking along the shoreline. It was my place to be. Yeah, I recently went last Friday. I went up to Omaha. There is a predator-proof area there on the Spit, and there are some pretty nice birds up there. But like on my own, Friday morning, very early on sunrise, lying in the sand, slowly making sand tracks across the beach as I get closer to birds. There's nothing more peaceful than doing that for me.
Yeah, and sometimes I feel the image almost doesn't matter, Sometimes just the whole process of doing this is sort of so much fun. The image is just, it's like an afterthought. And nobody knows what happened before and after that.
Yeah, I think the last few years it's getting more like that. It's going out and experience things, setting my expectations very low. Like I set my expectations that if I get one image or half an image, just as I get out, that's a good thing. And then Friday I got 10 solid images, so that was really good. But yeah, to me it's experience. Landscape. I love to get out and look through landscapes, but I think the last 4 missions I've had, I didn't even get the camera out. So it's one of those, very frustrating things. But I think being outdoors, what can go wrong being outdoors and just experiencing the elements that we have around here.
Yeah. And how did you get into bird photography?
I was thinking about the other day, and I really don't know, other than I can remember being at Muriwai after a surfing session out there, and I walked up over from the main beach up to where the gallant colony is there. There's a very, it's world-class gallant colony. Unfortunately, I can't get to it at the moment. It was damaged heavily in the cyclones, so it's been closed for a while. And I can remember rattling off a couple of thousands of images on a very early DSLR. It's cheap to shoot on digital. So, and I got one image of this gannet banking against one of the sea stacks, and out of all of those images that mostly were dud, there was that one, and it just sort of became a thing where I go for a surf, and then I would then go with my camera up into the gannet colony, and then fast forward many years later, I don't surf a lot, and I mainly just go to the birds. So I think it was through that, and I think capturing things that you just can't see with the naked eye, which is quite intriguing. Unfortunately, that became the driver in terms of like longer and longer lenses, and then realizing just how expensive they were. But I think I've always been very in tune with nature and always loved our wildlife in New Zealand, and I think it just had a nice connection between experience and our wildlife, and from there it's really sort of dominated since then.
Yeah, and the other fascinating thing about bird photography, especially, is it's really difficult to sort of nail the subject, right? I mean, they're always moving, and you need to be skillful enough to get that correct composition with the right expression. I saw one of the photographs where the bird is sort of the it's twisting its neck, sort of, like, and
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
I don't know which one it is, but I found that very expressive. And how does that happen? Like, what's your process in sort of nailing that composition? What is it that you look for, or is it a process of following the bird and anticipating what it will do?
Yeah, good question. I think it's a combination of spending enough time with a bird and the bird species and understanding what it does. Most birds generally, if you spend enough time with them, you can kind of figure out what they're going to do. And most of the time they do really, really boring stuff, right? So it's just, unfortunately, sitting there and waiting for when something happens. It's like any form of like action sport. I would call it action, because you're looking for like peak moments with birds. And it's not always, a wild flare when they're flying or aggressively defending their territory or anything. It can be as simple as what you said. I think you're talking about an image of a New Zealand dotterel, which was preening, and then there was an image I was after, which I haven't got yet, but I got this other crazy view where the bird was preening, and instead of like turning its head back up and facing, it completely flipped under and looked at me in kind of reverse, which was, you're just waiting for that, and your fingers on the shutter, just waiting for that peak moment. And if you don't wait for that peak moment, and if your mind strays, you quite often miss that stuff. So a lot of the stuff is a happy accident, but the happy accidents come with all that time spent in the field, understanding your bird, understanding how to get close to birds without stressing them out, which is easier said than done, and finding what you think is a good angle on a bird and what looks good. And that's done looking at thousands of just duds and just in Lightroom and just deleting, and you just figure out, I don't like this composition, and finding compositions that work, like particular gestures that birds seem to work best with, and actually more eliminating the ones that you don't like. So now it really is a combination of fieldcraft, understanding your bird, understanding what the light's doing, and how you want to take this image, whether you want backlit, front lit, side lighting, and the equipment now is just so darn good as well. It's like crazy good at how you can offload that sort of technical cognitive load on your mind in terms of trying to get the technical side of things right. You can just trust your camera now, which is, yeah, it's been a godsend the last couple of years. So not one thing. It's intuitive, but I'd say there is a process. Thing is like, where are the birds? What's the light doing? How do I want to approach them? What's the wind doing? And then sort of more importantly is like, okay, how do I approach the bird, and how do I get low? Because a lot of those bird shots you'll see of mine are all very low. And I think any wildlife photographer will tell you, if your photos don't look so good, get low. And yeah, that means crawling around in mud, crawling around in sand, chewing off your elbows on the ground as you get it closer. But maybe I'll sit down one day and write a dissertation on what I do. But at
Yeah,
the
you
moment,
should.
it's
You should.
very organic.
Yeah, because why I ask is, I mean, I see a lot of wildlife photography which looks very documentary in nature. This the art part of it is sort of missing though in those pictures. So it's unlike other genres where you can actually, with people you can post them, or in still photography you can sort of art direct that. But in wildlife photography you can't, right? And many of those
Yeah,
award winning wildlife photographs, looks almost unreal. I don't know how they got the timing right. So it just amazes me to have that balance between showing that species and really beautifully and in a very artistic manner. I mean, that is, I guess it's really difficult, and a lot of things have to go right in order for that to happen.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of that is just spending time in the field, understanding your equipment, understanding your subject, and yeah, and a bit of luck. Like I can't remember who said something earlier today. To me, I can't remember. It was quite poignant. 100%. I can't remember what it was. It was more along the lines of, 100% of the shots that you don't take will be rubbish, right? So if you don't get out there and do it, then you're never going to get anything anyway. So, but yeah, I look at some of those competitions and some of the very top wildlife photographers that I admire, and yeah, they blow my mind just how good their images are. And the competitions like the British Natural History Museum competition, you're not allowed to touch those images at all. And the thought of getting almost perfect images straight out of the camera is something that I strive to do, and I have a few. But most of the time, I take my images into Lightroom, Photoshop, and I will strive to get a really clean image that sets off the animal or bird in its best light. And And that does mean, I do post processing on my images. I'm not afraid of bashing pixels at all. I don't add stuff in at all, but like the frame is the frame, but it'll be tidied up a little bit. But yeah, look, the award winners, gosh, yeah, I utmost admiration to those that get images that tick all of those boxes and is pretty much straight out of the camera.
Right, right. And if I see your feed, a lot of bird images off late, and a lot of the landscape is not much of landscapes recently. Is there a reason for that?
I I haven't been that engaged with the landscapes and where we live in Auckland since Murawai's been closed. I just haven't got out to the west coast that often, and sometimes I just don't have time to just go and trek in somewhere, stand on a hill, set up, and then walk out in the dark. I find wildlife is just a little bit easier in terms of like it's a wham bam sort of get there, get in position, shoot a few frames, come home. So that's that, and it just appeals to me more so from a action perspective than landscape. I love landscapes. I love being out doing that. I just found that Auckland, I've lost my mojo for Auckland at the moment in terms of landscape. I went on a trip to the South Island, a workshop last year, and that was fantastic. It was like a week of unadulterated just landscape photography, and those landscapes really inspire and just are fresh and are inspiring. And I think that's one of the harder things about living in Auckland is to keep it fresh and find new places to shoot. Tall Bay, as you mentioned, like that's 10 minutes from home. I always like going out there when the light's right, the tide's right, because there's thousands of compositions there that you can find. So it's quite a good one to practice and keep your eye in. But I don't want to post 100 images of Torbay on my feed. So there's lots of images that are sitting there that I could post that I probably will post at some time, but not conscious. It's not a conscious. I guess my balance of landscape to wildlife is I just love wildlife more so, and it's more accessible for me.
Right. Actually, there are two images of your landscape which I want to sort of discuss with you. One is the close up of that rock with the mountains in the back. Not sure which one. It doesn't say where you took it, but
Is it very blue?
yes, it is blue. Rock the Blue, I think, is the name of that
Yeah, I
composition.
think that was like Heron taking on that workshop that I mentioned last year.
There was another one where you have those three small rocks,
Oh yeah, okay.
and the one that before that was the close up of that rock with the background of the mountain peaks in the back. I don't know where.
Oh yes, okay. Yep. Got them right in front of me.
Yeah.
So they were both taken on that workshop that I did last year in July, August.
So where was the South Island,
South
Queenstown?
Island, yes. So the blue the lake with the blue rocks is Lake Heron, which is in a fantastic part of New Zealand, Ashburton Lakes, which is inland from Christchurch. I've never been there before, and no cell phone reception, completely off the grid, and just magical, big mountain scenery. And the other, there I see you talking about two lakes, because the other one with a peak next to it is Magical Mood. I've put on the thing and the title, and that is up Glenorchy Paradise Way, sort of Lake
Right.
Rock.
You did a lot of surfing, but not many surf photographs.
No, and I guess there's some there. I
Yeah,
have
yeah.
been out at Muriwai when there's been some good ground swells, and I do go out there when I know that the surf is looking good, and I will shoot, but I don't post it on my feeds most of the time unless it has some sort of if it's a little bit more of a general appeal, not just a sports shot. It's got to have something a little different. I love big surf of the West Coast, big offshore surf, lots of power, and really nice light. I don't get out there enough to do that. And I certainly, there's lots and lots in my archives that, no one's seen. But Instagram is only a small amount
Yeah.
of what I do.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I mean, your photographs are so sharp. I mean, this amazingly sharp. I don't know. Is it? How did that happen? Like, is that something that you strive for?
Yeah, I do strive to get good, clean, technically competent images out. And I think understanding what your medium is to display them on. I do a lot of my own printing. So there's a different way in terms of pushing for output on paper as opposed to output on Instagram, for example. And like every image that I have, when it goes up onto Instagram, I've got the main processed file, and then I will take it through a couple of resizing and sharpening steps to make sure that it looks good on Instagram. Instagram's a funny thing, because it'll muck with your files, and unless you've got it kind of like optimized, your images can look quite terrible in terms of what they do. So it really is just right sizing it for Instagram or Facebook. They all have their own little foibles in terms of resolution, and that resolution you sharpen for that resolution. But yeah, if it's not sharp when I bring it in and start processing it, it gets binned. So you don't see the thousands of mistakes, that's for sure. There's plenty of blurry, out of focus images that I produce.
Right. And so you've kind of stuck with nature and landscape pretty much. What I see, and I'm sure you've taken other kinds of images, other
Yep.
genres as well. But have you thought of exploring other type of photography as well, like with people and event, or the other like using artificial
So,
light or
yeah,
whatever?
I, I guess as a beginner, and with a camera, you'd shoot anything that moves, right? Or not moves. So I've been through a lot of that. I still love travel photography and traveling with my family and partner, wife, in terms of how we go. I mean, I like to document those. And every time we go away, I produce a book, which is, a really good memory. My daughter was an avid footballer, so I spent many years sitting on the sidelines shooting football games, and I actually started shooting quite a bit for the club, the both senior women and men's side of things. So I did spend quite a few seasons shooting football. So I'm a reasonable dab hand at football photography. Background, my sport when I was younger was football, so it's all very easy to but again, that was good while daughter was playing football. Once she sort of fell out of the game, I've kind of backed off a little bit. It's very time consuming, and it's one of those been there, done that. But it did develop really good technical capabilities around how to handle autofocus, how to frame fast, how to pick up peak action. So that one's been there. I've done begrudgingly a couple of friends' weddings, which I will never ever do again. I have a couple of wedding photographer friends. Utmost admiration for them. It's just not my cup of tea at all. I really am very introverted. I like being on my own with my camera. Even when a couple of us are out shooting together, we all kind of do our own thing, and it's shooting side by side most of the time. So I really like that soul pursuit component of it. So really, wildlife, landscape, travel are kind of the genres that I really like. People, not so much. I really just like the whole combination of being outdoors with unique situations, our wildlife, our landscapes, and trying to capture really fleeting moments, which is, that's really sparks my creative spirit above anything else.
Yeah, I think it perfectly suits your personality as well. The landscape and nature, it's very the whole act of actually going out there and being one with nature is such a great experience. And if you like being, with yourself and have that experience, it's perfect genre for you.
Yeah, it definitely is a pursuit for, an individual. I do find that if I'm out with other people, sometimes I just can't get into my groove or my zone for shooting. And sometimes you just got to like really just sit and start to feel what's going on. And I think if you've got chit chat going on or distractions, it really can stop you being productive at all.
Right.
And I find it also when I'm out, it does take a while to warm into a situation. It's very rarely that I bring back images that the first couple of the session are really good. It almost seems to be like a couple of hundred before I kind of got my eye in. and really feeling what's going on. Having said that, sometimes I can take 3,000 images and they're all rubbish. So it depends. But yeah, it's definitely my form of mindfulness, I think, and I haven't really clocked onto that until recently. That when I'm out there, the more you can engage in the environment within and subject, you don't think of anything else, which is the great thing for me. And we all live busy, hectic lives,
Yeah.
and that's free. It's a bit of gas and some time, and I always feel much better for going out there and doing that. And if I've got some images that I can print, that's awesome as well.
Well, it's almost like therapy the way you speak about it.
Oh yeah, it's therapy, right? That's for sure.
Right. Right. So what next, Paul? I mean, is there any change that you want to like explore in your photography, or other bird species that you want to cover, or explore other
Oh
national
gosh,
parks?
I think my main theme in terms of improving is just getting my images just more cleaner, simpler, and just portraying the subject how I really think they should be in their best light. And I think seeing things that you can't see with the naked eye is really what I love. Bird breeding, and they'll be pulling their beak along a feather, and as they just come to the end, we'll see a feather that they have in their beak. Just capturing those really different type of images. So I'm shooting quite differently now. I still warm up on like stock sort of shots, but I'm out there trying to capture very different behavior. I'd love to be able to travel all over the show. I look at YouTube and you see people Svalbard, Iceland, all that sort of stuff, which would be great. But I do think we have a really remarkable backyard here as well. And yeah, I think many years ago, 10 years ago, I would have been all for flying off to the end, to somewhere up to the Arctic or something like that. Now, not so much. I'm quite happy shooting around here. And I think that it's really only the last couple of years that I actually started to really like the images that I'm producing. I think we all, as photographers, have this inner critic, which is always picking up what's wrong in an image and forgetting about what's right. Even though you've got a lot of positive reinforcement from friends, family, other really good photographers that you really admire, and I think I want to keep going with that. Really being satisfied with the images I'm producing. It's taken such a long time, and the only way you can do that is to spend the hours doing it. But I have felt like in the last year or so, although I'm liking my images better, I feel like I'm stuck a little bit and plateaued. And I don't know what is next. I don't know what it is yet that I want to do to take it to that next level. I just hope that the passion still stays there. I don't get stuck so long that it gets frustrating. Someone says finding a good mentor is always a really good thing to do. And I've got some good peers in terms of shooting, and we have constructive feedback on each other's shot. But I haven't found anyone yet who would really, that I feel I could really push further on with. But I don't know what pushing forward means yet for me either. So as long as I'm enjoying my shooting and getting unique images, I'm kind of quite happy for the moment.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Paul. Thanks for being on the show. It was great talking to you, and this is some solid nuggets that I would love to share with my listeners. Thank you so much.
Oh, awesome. I hope it is interesting to other people. I feel like.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's so much great information that's in there. And when I actually edit and I put together and showcase
Yeah,
images, it'll really come out really nice. So thank you so
cool.
much for your time. So that was episode 51. Thanks, Paul, for coming on the podcast. It was great talking to you. Do give him a follow on Instagram. His handle is Paul Kettel. I will link that in the show notes. Appreciate each and every one of you who listen to this podcast. Do leave a review on Substack, Spotify, or wherever you listen to this podcast. I'll give you a shout out in the next episode. Till the next episode, stay safe and keep clicking. This is Rajeev signing off.